Hi, welcome to Authors Talk by Trishna. Let's begin with the horror night today. Story 4, Lonely in Death. The book Ghost of the Silent Hills. Let's begin. Sagar had recently been transferred to Chamba, an enchanting Himalayan town situated on a mountain ledge between Dauladhar and Zanskar ranges with the panoramic view of the meandering spurting river Ravi a few hundred feet below. Sagar had an added reason for joy when he received the orders for the transfer. Chamba was his hometown, his birthplace. He had spent the entire childhood and school days here. He had left it to join the undergraduate studies at Jalandhar because there was no college in Chamba. Immediately after college, he got a job and life became demanding. He had hardly been home for more than a week ever since. Even when he'd got married 5 years ago, he had taken just 10 days off. Now he was coming back home once again with his wife and 3-year-old son Ankur. His parents lived in a charming 3-storied wood and grey shell house. Sagar was their second son among 4. With all of them settled in different towns, the parents had been living alone for many years. They were now happy to have one of their sons coming to live with them. The unoccupied ground floor was cleaned, aired, and made ready for the family. Typical of the houses in Chamba, the entire topmost floor was a massive dining hall with a large kitchen in one corner. This vast space was exclusively for community feast, locally called dham. The south-facing wall of this hall that extended into the kitchen was lined with series of small windows and that presented a panoramic view of the sunrise and the sunset, and also of the famous Chaugan, the bazaars around it. Akhand Chandi, the erstwhile palace of the king, the top chhatris of Lakshmi Narayan Mandir and the red flags atop Chamunda Devi Mandir flapping in the breeze. Chaugan was well-maintained multi-use grassy field, the largest flat area of the town, which was a playground for children, a meeting ground for grown-ups, a place for holding public and political meetings, etc. Once a year, the famous Minjar Fair was held here. Sagar had so many memories attached to Chaugan. So much of his childhood had been spent here, playing or chatting with friends. Now, after a really long gap, he was going to be back to the place of his old connections. He had always missed the warmth of this typical hill house with a slanty roof of grey slate, like most houses here, imparting the town its striking aura. On a cool August evening of the year 1965, Sagar reached Chamba with his family. After dumping their luggage in a portico or happy chit-chat with parents on the first floor veranda, cups of hot masala chai, a special meal in the kitchen that his mother had prepared to welcome them, the family moved to the ground floor for the night. It had been a tiring journey, and after taking out the bare essentials from their luggage, they got into the bed. Ankur had gone to sleep earlier than usual. As Sushma extended her hand to switch off the lamp, Sagar stopped her. "No, Sush, let it be on for some time." Sushma looked at him in surprise. "Why, Sagar? What happened today? You always want the light to be switched off as soon as you hit the bed." "I don't know why. I don't want it to be dark just yet. Are you okay? Sort of. Please, Sagar, tell me what's the matter. I don't know, Sush. I have this strange feeling I am truly happy to be back here. It has always been the only real home for me. But I have this sad, distressing feeling deep in my heart. I don't know why I feel like that. There's no reason. Sagar rubbed his forehead with his fingers. You are tired. We have had a long day today. Even I'm exhausted. Sushma pulled the kilt up to her neck and closed her eyes. No, Sushma, it has nothing to do with fatigue. I am used to traveling a lot, you know that. It is a feeling, a depressing, dismal feeling that I have never felt before. Maybe you should see a doctor tomorrow. You are talking as if I am going to have a heart attack. It is not that, it is just a feeling. I feel sad. Doctor can't cure sadness, can they? It is not like I'm suffering from depression. I was fine till dinner time. Then it must be the food that you have eaten. I saw how you were eating with gusto. It's got nothing to do with food. Never mind. You won't understand. Go to sleep. Turning his back to her, Sagar pretended to sleep. Sushma switched off the lamp. But sleep wouldn't come easily to Sagar. He felt awfully restless. He could find no reason for his gloom. He had always been a happy-go-lucky person, was thrilled to be back home. He had been so happy with the thought of spending quality time with his parents after a long gap. Then why had his melancholy seeped into him, enveloping his tightly into a strong grip? In the middle of the night, he got up to go to the toilet. The toilet was outside at the other end of the central courtyard. A door from the glazed veranda into which the ground floor bedrooms opened led to the courtyard. As Sagar stepped out of the veranda door into the courtyard, he felt a light touch on his shoulder. Someone was trying to draw his attention. He stopped and turned, and for a moment he could swear that he spotted a shadow that faded instantly. He shut and opened his eyes. Perhaps he needed to go his eyes checked. He then went back and switched on the light that flooded the courtyard. There was no one around. Maybe just the breeze. He tried calming his unease even though he knew it wasn't windy at all. Finishing his business, he hurriedly returned and slipped under his warm quilt. He was shivering. An icy layer of cold seemed to have swooped around him. The next morning, he woke up fatigued. He was to join his new office as its head, but there was no excitement about it anymore. What had gone wrong with him in just a few hours? When he had landed here last evening, he had been full of enthusiasm. He wanted to begin his career with a renewed verve. As the day progressed, Sagar began to settle down, the new office, meeting his new staff, getting to know the 90-gritties of his work, beginning new assignments. It all kept him busy throughout the day. By the evening, he was once again his original self, calm and easygoing. He returned home in better spirits. He played with his son, discussed the day affairs with his wife, chatted with the parents over a cup of teas, and returned to help Sushma set up their room. All done, Sushma declared that she was going to the kitchen to feed Ankur. Before the adults had their dinner, come up after a little rest. I don't have the energy to run up and down. I'm tired after unpacking the whole day. and with these instructions she left him alone. As soon as Sagar lay down, the day's weariness began to overpower him. He dozed off. He had been asleep for barely 10 minutes when he woke up with a start. Someone had woken him up. He had distinctly felt someone shaking him, calling out his name. He looked around in a daze. The room was icy and empty. Sagar shivered and reluctantly got off the bed. He felt very tired and very depressed. Sadness was all around, hovering like a thick fog, enveloping him, saturating him. Faint sounds were coming from the top floors. He felt an intense need to escape from his room, from isolation. Putting on his slippers, he rushed out to join his family. He didn't even stop to shut the door. Sushma, why did you run away hurriedly after shaking me awake? He complained, huffing and puffing the moment he found her in the kitchen. She was helping his mother lay dinner. Ankur sat on a corner mat, playing with his toys. Waking you up? When? Sushma asked without diverting her attention from her task. Why hadn't you come down to wake me up just 5 minutes ago? No, Sagar, I haven't left the kitchen ever since I came up half an hour ago. Isn't it, Maji? Sagar's mother nodded to affirm. His father walked in at the moment. Seeing him, Sushma smiled. Perhaps Daddy Ji had gone down to wake you up. Gone where? Sagar's father asked his astonishment. Dad, had you come down to my room 5 minutes ago to wake me up? Sagar asked doubtfully. His father never liked waking up anyone. He knew. One of his set rules was that everyone should be allowed to sleep as much as their body needed. Why would I do that, knowing well you are tired after days' hard work? After a pause to ponder, he said, I haven't been downstairs ever since my return from the market in the afternoon. I have been reading my book since then. He sat down on a stool with a decisive note. You must have been dreaming then. Sushma offered an explanation. Sagar wasn't sure anymore. Perhaps Sushma was right. Yet the feeling that someone had shaken him awake was so strong. Was there a point getting disturbed over it? Wow. What have you been cooking, Maji? I'm starving. It was a sensible diversion to get composed. The dinner was great. His mother had cooked his favorite food, and the kitchen was suffused with the fragrance of exotic spices and steaming rice. He was relaxed, happy up there. The fire in the fireplace, lively chit-chat, and everyone's company comforted him. He sat talking for an hour after dinner and would have continued if Sushma hadn't reminded him that it was getting late and he was to leave for office early next morning. As he followed Sushma downstairs, holding Ankur in his arms, Sagar felt the unexplained sadness return. He had a strong urge to return upstairs. Wouldn't Sushma mock him for his timidity? He followed her like a compliant puppy. Putting Ankur to bed, he checked all the doors. He then cuddled close to his wife and held her tightly in his arms. That made him feel better. More than the warmth of her body, it was her reassuring presence that did the trick. Within no time, he was in a deep sleep and snoring softly. The following few days passed without a hitch. The work at his office was going fine. Sagar spent most of his evening time on upper floor and slept in Sushma's arm like a baby. The initial depression began to ebb. Perhaps he had been exhausted after winding up work at the place and starting afresh at another. A fortnight later, on their second Sunday at Chamba, he said he had this sudden urge to visit a temple. Chamunda Devi Mandir atop Shah Mother range of the hills had been his favorite, a place he used to visit often with his friends. He loved the uphill climb passing through a silent, pristine forest. Sushma was happy at the proposal and hurriedly packed their picnic lunch. Ankur rushed around in excitement. He badly needed an outing. It was a quite long walk. Sagar was hot and tired after carrying Ankur on his shoulders all the way up. After offering prayers in the temple, they found a shady spot to enjoy their picnic lunch. Today, they were the only visitors at the temple. The priest had closed the temple doors and had gone to his lodging at the back, probably for lunch. Presently, Sagar began to get perturbed. He surveyed his surroundings. Something was around that was making him uneasy. He could strongly sense it. It was then that noted the steel box heavy with parathas move slowly. The movement was very mild, just about an inch, but distinct. He stared dumbfounded. Even a strong breeze couldn't have moved the box thus, and it wasn't breezy. Then how did the box move? Who did that? He looked at Sushma. She was feeding Ankur, unmindful of what happened. Was there someone else here? Someone he couldn't see, who was trying to share their space and meals? Sagar was flummoxed. Sushma, if you are done, let's go back. We must reach home before it gets dark. Sushma looked up at the sun. It was way far from the horizon. They could have easily spent an hour more, but she quietly nodded. Soon after she finished eating, she packed up. Lately, Sagar's behavior had begun to intrigue her. He had been acting odd ever since they had come to this town. Something was just not right. All through their return trip, Sagar kept turning to look back. He had this funny feeling of being followed. This was giving creeps to Sushma. She too turned a number of times but found nothing. There was no one around. Then why was Sagar behaving as if they were in danger of being ambushed? Once back home, Sushma and Ankur went upstairs. Sagar decided to stretch his back and lay down on his bed. The light of the day was slowly fading and soon it would be dinner time. He could rest till then. The window of the room was open and the fresh breeze brought in slight October chill of the mountains. The fragrance of the blooming jasmine bushes in a flower bed right outside the window seeped in too. Now Sagar was enjoying the fresh breeze. He was shivering from the cold. He needed to close the window, but when he turned to look at it, he saw a shadow there. A sudden chill entered the room. Who's there? There was no answer, but the shadow dissolved. Perhaps someone was paying them a visit and had walked past the window. Sagar marched out. There was no one outside. The miserable feeling was returning gradually, annoyingly, alarmingly. He closed the window and rushed upstairs. After 10 steps, the stairs curved, and when Sagar reached the curve, he distinctly felt someone tugging at his shirt. Then an icy cold hand tightened around his for a brief moment. His hand jerked away instinctively. The stairs were empty. Then who was there? It was all getting so weird. He felt a shiver run down his spine. He shuddered and raced up, covering 2 steps at a time. As usual, his mother and wife were busy with dinner preparations. Ankur was playing in a corner. Sagar went to sit on a low wooden stool, wiping his sweaty brows with his shirt sleeves. His mind was troubled. There was someone or something around here. He was sure this time, and he was the only one who was feeling its presence. Rest of the family was totally unaware of it. Or was it simply his imagination? What imagination? I wasn't even thinking much when I saw the shadow and the feeling of someone holding my hand. How can I imagine such things? Lost in these thoughts, he ate his dinner abstractedly. Why are you so quiet today? Sushma asked. Just tired, he responded evasively. Sagar had a sleepless night. He was worried and frightened. There was no explanation as to why something mysterious was happening around him. But he couldn't discuss his suspicion with anyone, not even with Sushma. What was the point? Either they would be skeptical or get unnecessarily alarmed. Monday morning began in low spirits. He tried to be normal, but Sushma was quick to notice his fallen face. Don't go to office if you are unwell, she suggested. No, I can't stay at home. I am better off in the office. Sushma glared at him. What kind of statement was that? He had never been so rude. Why do you have any problem staying at home with us? No, Sushma, it is not that. I mean, I can't stay at home with so much work lying on pending in my office. But once in office, he couldn't devote even half his attention to work. He remained uneasy and agitated, and at times verbally pounced at his subordinates without reason. He left office very early, realizing that if he stayed on, he would be branded the most obnoxious boss. Arriving at home, he straight away went to bed. Sushma voiced in concern, You are not well, Sagar. I'll call a doctor. There's no need. I just need to sleep and I'll be okay. When he woke up 2 hours later, he immediately picked up Ankur sleeping next to him. He requested Sushma to follow him upstairs to his parents' room. Let's spend the entire evening with them. We have hardly spent any time with them ever since we've come. Sushma followed him, frowning at his statement. It wasn't true. They had been spending at least 2 hours each evening with them. Moreover, Ankur stayed up for at least half a day enjoying his grandparents' indulgence. But if it made Sagar happy to be upstairs with his parents the entire evening, it was fine with her. Though she would want a few private moments with Sagar. Ever since they had come to Chamba, he had changed. He used to be so loving and attentive to her needs. She couldn't grasp what had brought such a sudden change in him. Once upstairs, Sagar became calm and was in a better mood. He even offered to help in the kitchen. He cut vegetables and then sat chatting with his mother and wife cooked meals. He lingered a little longer after dinner. Sushma had to remind him that it was time for parents to retire, and so should they. Ankur had been asleep on the floor mat and needed to be put to bed. Though he didn't want to. Sagar got up. Picking up Ankur, he followed Sushma outside. The moment he landed on the ground floor, the uneasy feeling returned. He slept cuddled with Sushma. Her presence was like a blanket of comfort. For the next couple of days, much to Sagar's relief, nothing untoward happened. It was the end of December. The mountains had their first snowfall. Chamba was buried under 2 feet of snow and reeling in an extreme cold wave. The temperatures plummeted below zero at midnight. On one such shivering cold night around midnight, Sagar needed to use the toilet. He dilly-dallied for as long as he could. Getting out of the warm kilt was agonizing. I wonder why the toilet is built outdoors. I must get one built indoors. He got up in half asleep state and put on his woolen gown. Slipping his feet into winter slippers, he stepped out. The winter snow blanket glowed silver in the moonlight. The dark branches of the sweet lime tree in the corner of the veranda, now heavy with layers of snow, swayed gently in a mild breeze, posing a stark contrast to the still scene around. Sagar put his foot on the first step and froze. A shadow slowed emerged from the under the tree. It was a vague outline of a tall, lean man. Or was it just a shadow? Where was the person? He looked around to see if there was someone around whose shadow was falling at that point. The tall stone wall that separated their house from the street obstructed any outside view. The two-leafed main door was shut and locked from inside. There was a straight wall of their neighbor's house behind the shadow. Apart from the moonlight, there was no other light that could have formed the shadow. Whose shadow was it? The shadow was still watching him intently. Sagar had barely stood there for 10 seconds before his sleepy head realized that the shadow had not formed on the ground or the wall. It was in the air, erect and still. Then it began to move towards him. He wanted to run but found his legs frozen. He felt wetness between his legs. When the shadow was barely 5 feet away, he came to life. Jumping back indoors, he shut the door with a bang. The noise woke Sushma up. She raised her head from the pillow and found Sagar fumbling with the latch. He was shivering violently. What's the matter, Sagar? What happened? She switched on the table lamp. There's something outside in a courtyard, he stuttered. Who? I don't know. A shadow. Let me see. No, don't. There is a ghost. Before Sagar could stop Sushma, she had already opened the door to peep out. There's nobody out here, Sagar, she declared after a quick scrutiny. But her heart was leaping against her ribs. Please shut the door, Sushma. Just shut it. Sagar's voice was frantic. Closing the door, Sushma turned to face Sagar. He was extremely pale and shaking uncontrollably. He held his hand and led him to their room. I'll go up and get you a glass of hot milk, she declared. No, you aren't going anywhere. Sagar tightened his hold on Sushma's hand and stopped her. Just stay with me, Sushma. I am scared. Scared of what, Sagar? I don't know. Something has been happening ever since we came here. There's something that is bothering me. I have been feeling a presence around me, but today, just now, I saw it too. Saw what? Sushma was alarmed. Shadow of a man, just a shadow. It moved towards me, came close. But I didn't see anything. You haven't been feeling anything, but I have. Sushma shuddered. Sagar, you are scaring me. I am scared too, Sush. I am one being targeted. I don't know why. I don't know what to do. After an airy silence, Sushma said, we can't sit over the matter and do nothing. We need help. We will need to consult someone. Let's talk to the temple priest tomorrow. He may have some solution to the problem. Sagar nodded, a little less agitated. He changed into fresh clothes and got into the bed. Sushma held him in her arms and together they tried to get some sleep. Sagar took the next day off from work. The right after breakfast, he headed for the temple. The priest suggested holding prayers in the house. The following Sunday, they organized a havan on the ground floor. Sagar's parents were out of station attending a family wedding, and that suited the couple. They didn't want them to be alarmed. The priest prayed for the peace of any wandering troubled spirit that was drifting in the vicinity of the house, admonishing it to leave the realm of the living. Sagar fervently prayed to the unknown to stop troubling him and let him live in peace. Things improved thereafter. Sagar felt as if a dense cloud of gloom hanging over him had been blown away. Spring came and cold slowly subsided. Life was now a smooth flowing stream of calm waters. Then one night Sagar had a peculiar dream. The dream took him back to his childhood, to the time when he was a teenage boy of about 16. He was playing hockey match in Chaugan. Sagar was the right back player and his best friend Shiv was playing from the center forward position. It was a tough match. The score was 0-0 and they all were making an effort to win the match. A group of young girls were watching and cheering their game, and the boys were trying to impress them. He passed the ball to Shiv, who ran with all his might, dodging to the opponents and scored a goal. At the same moment, the referee blew the whistle. The match had ended. Sagar and his teammates shouted and jumped in joy. Then Shiv came to him and said, the match is over. We won. Come, let's go. Precisely at that moment, Sagar woke up. He was sweating as he had been playing a real match. He smiled to himself. The memory of those good old days had made him feeling nostalgic. How beautiful, how carefree were the days of youth. He lay on his back, recalling them. After a few minutes of pondering over his school days, Sagar turned on his side and went off to sleep again. The next evening, he brought up the topic during his conversation with Sushma. Sush, many of my childhood friends are probably still here in Chamba. I want to go to meet them. How do you know they all are still here? Their jobs might have taken them to different parts of the country or maybe abroad. You are right, Sush, but some may still be here. Others, I can get to them through their parents. I know where they lived, and like our parents, many may still be living in the same houses. He smiled happily. I have hardly been in touch with my old friends ever since I left Chamba. Though I made new friends in college, but Sushma noted the faraway look in his eyes. Nostalgia dripped in through them. There's a special bond with the school friends with whom you grew up. I want to reestablish those bonds. Sure, Sagar, I understand your longing. Even I miss my school friends so much. God knows where they are now, but we should definitely try to find your friends. But the coming days were too busy with the loads of works at office. Most evenings Sagar came home late from work. 10 days passed, thus then the dream reoccurred. The same game of hockey at Chaugan, the last minute goal by Shiv, the joy for having won the match, and then Shiv coming to him and saying, "Come with me, Sagar, let's go." Sagar woke up immediately after the dream. He quietly lay thinking about those good old days. He recalled that his was the last match they had played together after finishing high school. A day after this match, results had been declared, and all boys had gone their ways for further studies. Sagar had joined a graduate college at Jalandhar, and Shiv went to Jammu. They were in touch for a while, but then had slowly drifted apart. What a wonderful friendship was, Sagar recalled. He remembered how once a vicious player of the opponent team had hit him hard on his ankle with a hockey stick. His ankle had swollen profusely and he had been in terrible pain. Shiv had sat with Sagar throughout the night, talking to him to keep him distracted from the pain, applying ointments. By the morning he had felt much better. Where was Shiv now? Sagar wondered. His parents used to live in Sapri Mohalla behind the Akhand Chandi Palace. They were probably still there. He would go to meet them and also check on Shiv's whereabouts. He must be married by now and working somewhere. And the following Saturday evening, both Sagar and Sushma went to visit Shiv's parents. Sagar had no difficulty in locating the house. Although he was visiting it after almost 15 years, an old wrinkled man opened the door and then stood peering at the couple, straining his eyes, trying to recognize them. "Yes, whom do you want to see?" "Well, actually, I have come to meet Shiv. I'm an old friend. He used to study together in school." "Is he still there in Chamba, or has he shifted out?" Sagar shuffled his feet, and the old man further narrowed his eyes, gazing at him, examining him from top to bottom. "Who are you?" he asked after a gap of a half minute. "I am. Wait a minute. Aren't you Sagar?" He hesitated. "Or I am mistaken. My eyes have grown old and weak." The old man smiled faintly. "You're absolutely right, uncle. I am indeed Sagar." The old man nodded his head and beckoned the couple. "Come in, come in. What a pleasant surprise. In fact, my wife and I were talking about you just yesterday." The small sitting room hadn't changed at all. The same maroon sofa, two wooden chairs at straight back rectangle central table. Even the same maroon and beige striped curtains were the same, though now faded and at places stitched roughly to mend to torn portions. Nothing had changed. To Sagar it seemed that time had stood still here. The small house, a 40 watts bulb spread a dim gloomy light in the room, and Sagar shivered in the cold as he sat on the sofa. Sushma sat next to him, feeling equally uncomfortable. An old woman, grey haired and bent with age, entered the room to greet the guest. "Who are these young people?" she asked and waited for her husband to introduce them. "Do you remember Sagar, Shiv's friend? See how much he has changed." "Oh my God, Shiv's friend Sagar." The old woman rushed to embrace Sagar. She wrapped her arms so tightly around him that he felt suffocated. Then she fell into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Her shoulders shook with sobs and deep moans escaped her lips. Sushma and Sagar were puzzled at her conduct. The old man shut his eyes tightly. Two drops of tears escaped them. He wiped them with the back of his hand. After a few minutes he got up, walked to the sofa and gently led his wife away to make her sit on the chair. Beta, do not mind her behavior. She is a broken woman ever since she lost her only child, our Shiv. What? Sagar almost jumped out his seat. Yes, beta, we lost Shiv in a bus accident. It's been almost a year now. Oh my god, I didn't know about it all. The news of the accident was all over the national and local papers. 10 people had died in that accident. Our Shiv was one of the unlucky 10. I think I read about the accident but had no idea about Shiv. Shiv's mother sighed. Her voice was choking when she spoke. He had come to visit us for 2 weeks. He had fixed his marriage to a lovely girl. He had promised to come again after 2 months for a formal engagement. But it wasn't meant to be. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. The bus by which he was returning to work fell into 200 feet deep gorge. A painful sigh escaped her lips. Sagar was stunned. He didn't know how to console the poor parents. He could imagine the pain they were going through, and he hadn't even known about the tragedy that had shattered their lives. He should have come to console them earlier. Both of us are dead too from inside. Shiv's father spoke, looking at his distraught wife. And he was so attached to you, Sagar, Shiv's mother sighed. There was this time a few years ago, we were attending a family wedding at Dalhousie. Someone asked Shiv if he felt lonely, being the only child. Without batting an eye, he had said, I have a brother, Sagar, so how can I be lonely? Sagar had tears in his eyes. He had no idea about the strong feeling Shiv had for him. Yes, Shiv had been a special friend, but that was all. Even Kishore, another schoolmate, was an equally close friend of his. Shiv's father continued. That fateful day before he left, he was talking about you. I wonder where's Sagar now, he had said. I miss him so much. I haven't had a friend like him ever since we separated, but I still want to visit his parents and check on him. I'll dig him out from wherever he is hiding. He has to attend my wedding, the old lady sighed and continued. How much he loved you, Sagar. You were like the brother he never had. All the discussions that evening were centered on the deceased. Sagar and Sushma stayed with Shiv's parents for as long as they could, promising to visit them often. Sagar and Sushma returned home in very low spirits. Sagar was silent throughout their walk back home. The shock of the death of a friend in the prime of his life and left him stunned. The night was back in Sagar's dream, the same scene of the hockey match in Chaugan, and the end of which Shiv once again came to Sagar and asked him to go with him. This time he even held his arm to pull him along with. That was the time Sagar woke up with a start. He was sweating profusely. This is odd. Why is the same dream repeating with precision and so often? That's all for today. This was the part 1 of the story 5. We'll continue part 2 very early soon. See you. Take care. Good night.